Okay, so I'm gonna talk about, for now, shapes, custom shapes that are built inside Photoshop. And these are vector graphics, which means that they are graphics that are resolution independent. Remember, Photoshop creates images that have resolutions, right? The higher the resolution, the better the quality. We specify the resolution from here when we create a new document. The more the number of pixels, the better the quality. But we have text, for example, that is resolution independent, which means what? Which means that, let's type, for example, Photoshop. Okay, if we actually take this and press Ctrl T and scale it up, you see it will always have a high quality. So let's zoom to 100%. If I press Ctrl T and scale this up again, it will always be at a very high quality. Why? Because the text actually is not a pixelated object, it's a vector object, the text. Which means that if you scale it up, it will always print at high quality. We talked about this before. Yeah, because the text in my case is white over a dark background, a bright background. So I'll decrease the brightness. Alright. So you see that if you grab this, scale it down or scale it up, no matter how much you scale it up, it will always be at a high quality. But if I rasterized my text because I wanted to apply some filters to it, like we did last time, right click, rasterize layer. Now it's no longer a regular text layer, which means that if I scale it up with Ctrl T, it's gonna start to pixelate. So let's scale it up a bit more. Alright, now here you start to see the pixelation. Yeah, the shift is for constraining the proportions. It's not for keeping it high resolution. So here, it's not clear on your screen, but on this screen, it's very clear that it's low resolution. Let's have a smaller text to start with, and then rasterize it, and then scale it up. So this is this text. If I scale it up without rasterizing, it will be high quality all the time. If I do rasterize it though, I would rasterize it because, like I did last time, I went to edit, transform, perspective, and I went up like this. You see, when I do rasterize it and I press Ctrl T, for example, and scale it up, you see it loses quality. So you should bear this in mind whenever you are working with text. Most of the times you don't rasterize the text. Most of the times, 90% of the times you don't, because you always want it to print at high quality. In case you have to do something for the text, like for example, blurring the text, in case the project required it, Ctrl T, scale it up, it's still not rasterized. If I wanted to blur this because the project required it in one situation, let's duplicate the layer. So I duplicated the Photoshop layer and I went to filter for this new layer because I still have the original. I have two in the same place. If I selected the copy and I went to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, they asked me to rasterize, I'll choose yes. Right, so now the blurring actually created a glow effect. Right, it's like actually it's a light inside the text. Now this is good, it's not bad because I still have the original printing at high quality, and the blurred text will not actually show that it's low quality because it's actually blurred. So the pixels are not very clear anyway. So I'm not losing any quality here. Right? And I would link the two in case I wanted to move them at the same time. So that would be a case when I would rasterize the text. But I wouldn't rasterize it just for the sake of rasterizing, because when I print it, it will look bad. So I told you this now because text by default is vector, which means that it always prints at high quality. Do we have other vector objects in Photoshop? Yes, we do. And they are found here. I'll talk about them in detail later. But for now, if you go to the custom shape tool and you click here under shapes, you have a lot of shapes that you can use in your projects. By default, you're not going to see that many. You're going to see a few. If you click here and click on animals, for example, and OK, you're just going to see the animal shapes. If you choose arrows, you're going to see the arrows. If you click on all, you'll see all of them. And again, by default, it's going to be like this, so you have to scroll to see the whole thing. But if you click on the corner of that window, you're actually going to see the whole thing without having to scroll. So in your case, Rita, you had to use the snowflake. You have snowflakes here, right? So you can use this one. Now these are vector objects, which means that they will print at high quality no matter what. Yeah. Right? So these will print at high quality. Let's try. Let's press Ctrl T and scale them up and press enter. You see they will always look high quality. Now, in case I wanted to give these an effect like we did before with the drop shadow, if I wanted this to look a bit 3D, it's not really 3D, but it looks a bit bulky, then I would apply a filter called, or an effect called bevel and emboss. Again, I'll talk about this in detail next week. So I click on F and I choose bevel and emboss. See what happens when I apply this. It starts to have an emboss effect. So it's not a flat surface anymore. It looks like it has a volume. Now, I don't like bevel and emboss all that much because a lot of people use it, so it looks very cliche. It doesn't look very new. But you can make it look new if you change the parameters. If you leave the parameters the way they are, it would look deja vu. So what you have to do, what you can do actually, is change the depth. If you change the depth, it will look like it has more volume. If you decrease the depth, it will look like it has less volume. So something like this now, Control plus to zoom in, it's much milder, much gentler. So let's go by 25%. You can choose to emboss it down or up. If you increase the size, see what happens. If you decrease the size, that edge will be smaller. Alright? You can smooth it out by increasing the softness value. What? Alright? And you can change the light direction from here. I'll talk about all these parameters in detail next week. But for now, it's there for you in case you want to test it out. And I'll press OK. I'll zoom out. I'll press Ctrl T and scale it down. Alright? Now here I see a border around it. It's because I'm selecting the actual vector, which we'll talk about later. If I select another layer, that will disappear. But at least now I know that this will print at high quality. And I will also tell you how to actually duplicate this without creating new layers when we talk about these. And you can, of course, change their orientations so that they don't all look the same. So change their scale and their orientation. So one would be small, one would be big. That would create a depth effect. So this is how I would use these shapes. And when I explain these, I will tell you how to create your own shapes and store them in that library so that you can use them over and over again.